I wanted to talk a few minutes to tell you about some group discussion work that I did in my online class. I had a class that was supposed to be about 40 or 45 students at the outset, and we came up with the idea that we wanted to have discussion posts because that was a way to keep them involved, and we decided on 2 posts a week. And the first post was to respond to a question that I would give them that would be on the material for the week, and it would require that they draw on their readings and draw on the oral over voice dubbed PowerPoint that I provided and some of the course links and things to answer this discussion question. And the second post was on a Thursday, and we wanted them in that post to summarize the key areas either of agreement or areas of disagreement among the students who posted on Tuesday. And they also had to raise a question based on the discussion for Tuesday and their response on Thursday. And so we had them doing these things. And I decided that if they were trying to summarize 40 student posts on Thursdays, that really would be a lot for them to do, added to everything else. And that it would be hard for us to kind of keep track of it as well. And so we came up with the idea of dividing the course into 4 discussion groups. So we had about 40 students, so we made 4 groups with 10 students each. And we had to give them the name, so we just named them after planets, Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and so on. And we put them in these groups, and it's very easy to assign groups on the Pearson program. Not that this is a commercial, but that's one thing that works really well. And so we broke them into these groups, and that way they were talking among groups of 10 on Tuesday, and then they were summarizing their group of 10 on Thursday. And I think this worked for the most part really well because they got to know each other. My idea was that this would be a semblance of either being in a small class where you get to know each other well, or where you're in a discussion group or a study group. And I thought that it might create more bonds among the students. In terms of the effect, I would say it varied from group to group. Some groups really clicked and just did really, really well. And other groups were less cohesive. And it happened that there was attrition in the class, which in a 7.5 week online class, that's going to happen. And so some of the groups were hit by attrition harder than others. And so there was one group that wound up with just about, by the very end of the class, 5 or 6 people in it. I think at the very end, 5. And one person in the group said that it was getting kind of boring with just 5. And so that student and another student actually asked if midway through the course we could rearrange the groups and switch people around, which I think would be a neat idea as well. And I thought it was such a neat idea that I did it. But let me say, don't try this, don't do this, because what happened is I lost all my discussion group grades up to that point. So Pearson is not ready to accommodate the switching of the groups midway through the semester or any point in the semester. Now the great thing is that I kept a record of the original groups, and when I put everybody back in their original groups, the grades returned. So that was a really good thing. So that's one thing. So what I would do next time, what I would recommend, is to have these groups be larger. I think I will do, when I teach this next, that I'll have 15 per group. And I don't think that's overly large, and I think it will allow for attrition and still to keep a decent size group so that they'll be dynamic. But in terms of our grading the exercises and going over them, I think it made it much more manageable because you could go through the discussion board and you could look at one group and get that done. And then if you needed to go do something else, then you could go back and look at another one later. So it was a nice way of getting pieces of grading done throughout the day, even if you only had a few minutes. And the other thing that I would say about the discussion boards that is important is both the TA and I responded on these boards frequently. And so I think that that was very important too. And sometimes I would respond to individuals, and sometimes I would just give a blanket response to that particular group. Sometimes I just said, this is a great discussion, and so on, but then other times I responded. And I did that especially if I saw common areas where students were running astray of what I thought was correct in interpreting the material. So those are the things I did. The other thing I'll mention, even though it's not on this topic, but is that the hallway conversations went well with the discussion groups, because the hallway conversations allow for more informal conversation, and that really was the whole class. And so they could all interact with each other in that forum. And I think using these two and checking both the discussion board and the hallway conversations frequently, and having the instructor and TA commenting on both, I think really helps them, again, to know that you're there, that you didn't just do it over the summer and run away to some other wonderful part of the world. That's it. Thanks.